Very good morning to each one of you. And let's start our day with our chapter number 8, which is reading raw data files. Now we had till date learned that how one can read existing SAS files, how one can read non-SAS files, which is a structured data that is like Excel spreadsheets or even other databases. And this chapter is going to be covered with how one can read raw files into SAS environment. So what do you mean by raw files? Raw files is nothing but simple data values stored in some of the DAT files or .txt files. So those files do not have any type of column descriptions. Those are only data files. Now, for example, to understand what data files would be, so I would like to show you that this is all which is with .dat are our data files, which are raw files. Okay. So do we see here? It's all SAS files. Yeah. So if you'll see this, this is a DAT file. So if I try to open one of the file, do you understand what these columns are for? What is the names of the columns? So these are simple values. So this is none of the values which, or this file is not, is termed as unstructured data file. Okay. So this is one example of unstructured data file. So we'll have another one also. So if you'll see one of it, even this is unstructured, so there is no proper structure. What is this columns or what are the values standing for? Okay, so even if we move ahead, yes, this is the same. See now, these are simple values. Are you getting it, everyone? Did you understand? So this
Yes, ma'am.
type of data files are termed as unstructured because they do not have a proper structure with rows and columns. They do not have a column defining the values. Hence, this is termed as raw files, or we can also call it as unstructured data files. All right. So to more into details, we'll get introduced to what is a raw file and how to read it. Then we'll see how to read a standard delimited data. Then we'll be using in formats to read the delimited data, and we'll see how to handle missing values within the data. Okay, so let's start with the first topic to get introduced to reading raw data files. So objective here is we'll be identifying the types of raw files and their input styles. Okay, we'll define the terms standard and non-standard data. Fine. So the scenario is, of course, we need to have the data to be read into SAS for our Orange Star Sports and Outdoors. From a raw data file, we have to create a SAS file, and then only once we have a SAS data file, then in a SAS environment, we'll be able to work on it, to process it, to generate the reports. Okay. So the programmers need to be able to identify the layout and the type of information in the raw file. All right, so it's telling the information of your Orion Star employees. We know currently they are from various countries like Australia, United States, and their information is stored into raw file. So what is a raw file? So raw file is known as flat file. Okay, so it's also termed as flat file. Why? Because it does not have proper structure. And of course, we also term it as unstructured. Fine. So they are text files that contain one record per line. A record typically contains multiple fields. Flat files do not have internal metadata. Metadata in sense, जसं आपल्याकडे SAS dataset आहे. Now for SAS dataset, we have its descriptor portion, its data portion. So that is termed as metadata. So for raw files, this information is not there, that what is this file, what is the name of the file, what is the type of the file is fine. But how many observations, how many variables, then its types and its formats and its labels and its length. So all this metadata information is not available. External documentation on these files are provided telling the values may contain for a specific data. So that's what it's telling. It's known as record layout is always available. A record layout describes the fields and locations within each record. Okay. Like for example, So this is what we have, a raw file. Now, if you'll see this raw file, you have the values and you observe every value is separated by comma. Are you getting it? So we should understand this is one value, this is another value, this is third value. So these values which are separated by a special sign, here the special sign is comma. So this is termed as delimited file. So what is a delimited file and why it is called delimited file? I'll let you know in upcoming topic. So you may have this type of files as well, where you do not have fixed columns, and you may have some files where you have column or you have the values in fixed column. So you'll find it is starting in one column, it's ending at one column. So if you'll see from, this is an imaginary ruler where you can count the columns. So it's 1 to 5, you may have one column value. Then this is after 5, 6, okay, sixth position. So from 1 to 6, you have one column value. Then from 7th position onwards, so 7, so the maximum length is 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So this is 15th column. So this is 10, 11, like this, okay? So from 7 to 15, this is the value which may come for the first name of an employee and so on. So this is how the raw values or could be one of them like delimited raw file, or it could be fixed column files. Are you following what are we looking into? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's what we saw. So this was not at all in fixed columns, but we saw one of the values of the data which are in fixed columns, correct? So it's starting in one typical column, it's ending in one typical column. So here also, so we'll have to count this to define the columns. So how to do that and how a data set is created, that all we'll see in detail in this upcoming topics. So fields and raw files, it's telling in order for SAS to read a raw data file, you must specify the following information. Obviously, if you want to read this raw file into your SAS data, we have to first tell SAS that we are going to create a SAS file. Then from where it is going to create, so we are going to give the in-file statement to specify this location of the raw file. Then within it, we'll have to describe about the column information. So we have to give an input statement and describe the column, its type, and how many length the value is. So that's what it's telling here, that in order for SAS to read a raw data file, you must first specify the following information: the location of your data, the name of the variables, and of course the type of the variables. So if you remember the very first example of our daily routine, which we were looking into your SAS Studio, the very first demonstration with chapter 2, if you could remember, was all about creating a raw data file, creating a data file from non-AMPS, if you remember. What was that? Non-sales people, correct? Are you remembering? So that we were creating a SAS file, and that file was a raw data file. Are you remembering it, that demo?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so that was the steps which we were following. So I said you that time also, so this is a data step where we'll be creating a SAS data set and we'll be reading it from a raw file with an in-file statement. So I'm just waiting for my studio to get initialized. Once it's initialized, you will recollect which code I'm talking about. Okay, so very first day, every day starting your session, you have to connect your library. So within your files, servers, and folders, you know that we do have program which was our very first. So this is what it is. You need to first tell what is the data set you are creating. From the path where this raw file is, it's a .csv file. Input is a statement which is describing the columns. Correct? So that's what it's telling, that when you want to read a raw file to create a SAS file, one should specify the location, the name of the variable, and the type of the variable. So this is what we are looking into. A location with in-file statement, and with input you give the variable name and its type. And length is a separate statement where we specify the length of the variable along with its type and name. All good? Understood? So that is what we are going to learn in detail. But when we are going to read a raw file into SAS, one should be familiar about the techniques that depending on the structure of raw file, what type of your input style should be. That is this. Okay. So this input style depends what is the structure of a raw file. Okay. So if your raw file consists of comma separating value, we may use a list input method where it consists standard and non-standard data separated by blank or other delimiter. So in our current example of this file, this data is not at all in fixed values or fixed columns, but they are separated with space. So this should understand this is the name, maybe this is the date of joining, this is the age, this is the state, and this is the salary he or she is earning. Correct? But they are separated by space. So this type of data is not into fixed column, but this data is a mixture of both standard and non-standard data. So what do you mean by a standard data? So standard data is nothing but an example of those data values here where SAS can read the data directly without any special instructions. So that can be easily read by SAS is termed as standard data value. Whereas this value, SAS will not understand because it contains alphanumeric values. For us, we know it's a date, but for SAS, it will not understand its date until we need to tell it that SAS should read it in this form, that as date 9 dot format. So this is going to be a non-standard data for SAS. This is standard, whereas this data consists special signs like dollar, comma. So SAS will not understand directly how to read it. So for this type of data also, we'll have to tell SAS that it is a data with dollar sign and a comma sign. So how to give that instructions again we'll see, but this is termed as non-standard data value. Understood, everyone? This is standard data values. This is non-standard data value. All good?
Yes, ma'am.
I could hear only single yes. How about others?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that this type of data, which is not at all in fixed column, but it has mixture of standard and non-standard data. For this, our input statement should follow the list input method. Okay. Whereas you have another input method termed as formatted input method, where you will be reading both standard and non-standard data, which are in fixed columns. And when you have a fixed column with only standard data, we use an input style termed as column input method. So these are various ways of input statement giving instructions to SAS. Depending on the data, you'll be writing your input statement. So what is it and how to give instructions, all we'll see step by step. Okay. So let's get introduced with standard and non-standard data. So see, this is the numeric standard data, and this is non-numeric standard data. Look at the data values carefully. All has some special signs. Whenever you have values which are not able to be read by SAS without a special instructions provided from our end, it is termed as non-standard data. So this is all non-standard numeric. This is numeric with standard. Exponential decimals are a part of standard data. Okay, so character data is always standard. Okay, some numeric values are standard and some are not. So this is the example of non-standard. This is the example of standard. All good? Clear with what is standard and non-standard data?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now answer this poll. What type of raw data file do you read? Now, of course, it's a basic question. Most of you are freshers, so you may not have worked on it. So for you, it is not required to know the proper answer. All right. Moving ahead, now we got introduced to types of raw data file. Now let's see how one can read a standard delimited data. Delimited data means the raw file where we have values of data which are not at all in fixed columns, and they are always separated by some of the special signs. Like for example, if I try to open this, most of the time the CSV files always open in Excel. But if I open it into Notepad, you'll find these are into fixed columns. The values are separated by comma. Okay, so when this is comma, of course, it's a special sign for SAS. Hence, it delimits SAS to read the value from left to right. So SAS will not understand what is this. So it will not able to read it properly. Hence, it delimits. Therefore, this type of values are termed as delimited raw data file. All understanding what we are looking into and understanding this concept of delimited raw file. Yes,
Yes,
no,
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
great. Make a note. The .csv files are most of the time, no, always they open into Excel. But CSV means, see, it's telling comma separated values, and they actually look this way. And comma is a special sign for SAS. SAS will not understand with special instructions. Hence, we give this information as delimited input, or we tell this file is a delimited raw file, and the input style would be your list input method, which we got introduced with this table. List input, standard and non-standard data separated by blanks or some other delimiter. So it's list input, okay? So how that list input works and how we can read it, we'll see it in upcoming topic here. So objective here is, we'll be using list input to create a SAS data set from a delimited raw file. And we'll see how a compilation and execution phase works when we are reading a raw data file. We'll explicitly define the length statement to give the length for your variable values. And we'll see how whenever there is a error of reading a raw file, how SAS represents that error into log. Now the scenario here is, you have sales.dcsv file. You have to create a SAS file. Of course, to create a SAS data set, we are going to make use of a data step. Okay. And it's telling this data is a comma delimited raw file, which is sales.csv. So I have tried to show you this file as well. So we will look into it, which is sales.csv. See, okay, do we have sales? No, no, it's that file. Let's open. It's a standard data. It will open in Excel. Your sales CSV. Okay. Not bad. So see. So do you see standard as well as non-standard data values in this file, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so which are non-standard files from this data? Non-standard values, sorry. Now, I hope you people have understood the concept of standard and non-standard data values.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me
Standard means,
from
ma'am,
this.
no.
And
Standard
date.
means no special character.
Okay, so in this, which is non-standard?
Ma'am, date.
Date.
Very good, very good. Date are non-standard. So there are two types of date. This is one type where you can tell it is maybe MMDDYY, and this is another type which is date 9 dot. Whereas all this is standard data value because those are simple values. This is numeric, this is character. All good?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes. So this is standard. This raw file is actually having both standard as well as non-standard data value. Okay. So that's what we are going to now learn, how we will give instructions in data step to read comma delimited raw file to create a SAS file. So SAS considers space, that is a blank value, as the default delimiter. both standard and non-standard data can be read. Delimiter म्हणजे दोन व्हॅल्यूज मध्ये जरी स्पेस असला तर सॅसला समजतं की ही एक व्हॅल्यू आहे आणि ही एक दुसरी व्हॅल्यू आहे. So because of blank, it understands that these are two different values. So that is a default delimiter. Okay. Fields must be read sequentially from left to right. So when we want to read a raw file into SAS, the instructions in your input statement should be as such that we should give instructions to read from left to right. And as I said you, the input style method which we'll be using here is list input. Okay, so how to make use of this list input? So this is a perfect example of list input. Now, because it's a .csv file, now we have this file from our studio. So here we should locate it non-EMPS. Its path, it's a server path for us for our studio. Correct? So this is the name of the data set. So in case if I don't write this, let's see what happens. So first instruction is I need to first locate the path after the data statement in file. Then I need to give the method of reading the raw file values. So it is with the input statement, we are defining the column and its type. And it will read like this to create a column: first name, last name, job title, salary for new emps.csv. So let's observe this new emps.csv as well. So new emp CSV, which is we need to open and see it into Notepad. So this is how the new emps file is: name, first name, last name, job title, which is sales representative level 2, and this is its salary. So this is what the instruction: first name, last name, job title, salary. Now understand carefully. Okay, now what is this? If I don't write this and I simply execute my data step. Okay, see how it is it reading it correctly? Look at this output. Salary is missing. Look at the job title, what value it is coming. Look at the last name and look at the first name. Do you see it's reading it correctly? And this is your raw file actually.
No, no.
Look at this values and look at this values. So what is the column? First name. Fine. So it's Satyakam. Okay. Last name, it's taking rep dot. In job title, it's taking level 2 and comma. A comma is also taking as a value from this raw file. And this value is been taken into job title and salary has been vacant. But at the same time, we are getting an alarm. So let's look into log. So log is giving us note. Okay. So all this is note. So what is this actually? Okay. So it's telling this is the imaginary ruler. Whenever we are reading a raw file in the memory of SAS, this ruler is created. It's termed as input buffer. Okay, we'll see how it is. But at the same time, it's telling invalid data read for salary in line number 2 from column 1 to 23. So this is 1, this is 5, this is 10, this is 15, this is 20. Okay, this is 25. Fine. And it's telling that this were the columns. This is the value it's trying to read. So this is the contents of your PDV. And it's telling now you have error equal to 1, underscore error underscore equal to 1, and underscore n underscore equal to 1. So what is this underscore error underscore and underscore n underscore? So we know that depending on how many rows it has or records it has in this raw file, that many times our data step will process. Everyone agreed with me? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if this raw file had 70 row records, So this data step will be processed 70 times. Agreed?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So we could also tell that this is a data cycle which it will process 70 times, or in other words, I'll say data step iterations. Okay, cycles we call it as iterations. This will run 70 times. Okay, so when the first record has been processing, it will read it as first time. So that is a counter, which is a default variable which is always created in PDB, which is a counter termed as underscore n underscore, and its telling value is 1. That is, it's the first iteration cycle. For the first row, we had an error, which is underscore error underscore 1. So it's again a temporary variable which is there into PDB every time a data set is created, either which is a SAS data set or a raw file or an Excel file. All this PDB content is created where this is the variable, its values, see variable, its value, and this is temporary, two variables always created. So when I use the term temporary variable, those are only there during processing into compilation phase. Those are dropped automatically when we are creating an output data. Okay. So this is what it's telling, that it is in the first iteration itself, there is an error. So why this is an error? Because you have given in your input without any instructions, you are telling SAS to create a new column, first name. Of course, it's a dollar, that's fine. So it's a standard character value. So SAS starts reading from left to right. Okay, so it starts reading from here. But as per the normal definition of column, the default column length is always 8 bytes. Okay, so it SAS reads 8 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, then it will read this till here, whatever it finds the value for last name. So SAS is not understanding that this is actually limiting, or it's a value. It's not a value, but it's limiting SAS to move ahead and read it properly. Hence, this is termed as delimiter. So we have to tell SAS that our data consists a delimiter, which is comma. And that is why this code earlier was having this option DLM, that is delimiter. So see, it's telling specifies an alternate delimiter. So you have to tell SAS that your data consists comma as a delimiter. Now, when I execute this data step, okay, now this DLM option is written into in file statement. Okay. And now in the log, do you see any errors? No, now it's telling all 71 records read correctly and a data set created. Now let's see the output. All good. But then if you see the values for job title, what has happened? Is it reading all the job title values?
No.
So it's sales space rep period dot level 2. So this is the whole value, but it's not able to read. So how many characters is reading? Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So as I said you, during compilation, when PDB is created, if you do not specify how many length character it is, default length for every variable is 8 bytes. Default length for every variable is 8 bytes. That's why SAS stores only 8 characters or reads 8 characters, because default length in PDB during compilation is 8 bytes. Got it, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is the reason why we then make use of this length statement to specify length. So this should be specified before input statement. Okay, either before or after in file, that's fine. But it is always recommended to write length before input. Then we will write variable name, its type, and length. So maximum length you can provide as per defined. Okay, space, column, type, length, column, type, length. Okay, now when I execute this data step, now you'll find your data is read accurately. Now no more truncation, because every column has a different length as per the requirement. And that length we have specified with the length statement. Understood? And now
Yes, ma'am.
a raw file is been read as a, which is a non-standard file, is created a standard data set with the name of new cell CMPs. So you have salary also. This is where it is your input style method, which is list input method, wherein in file statement, you have to provide what are the raw files separated with. So they are separated with the delimiter called as comma. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if this is understood, let's understand from slide. Which fields in this file can be read as standard numeric values? So which are standard numeric values in this file? Yes.
Date student, madam.
No, these are standard numeric values. Na? Dates are non-standard because they have special signs.
No, ma'am. Date student सगळे standard आहे.
Numeric. The word is
Only
numeric.
numeric values.
So this is
This
numeric.
is numeric.
This is standard numeric, this is standard numeric, this is standard numeric, correct? So this is what it is, and of course, the employee
Employee
ID.
IDs.
Okay, so employee ID and salary, the date fields are non-standard and require special processing. That is, dates are non-standard. Okay. So steps to be followed while creating a data set while reading a raw file is data, in file, input, run. So within your data step, these are the required statement. Of course, when you're creating a data set, very first requirement is a data statement followed with the output data set which you're creating. Because we are creating from a raw file, in file statement, and the path along with the file and its extension has to be provided. And because this file is a comma separated file, we need to give in file statement itself the delimiter specified into raw file into quotes, which is comma. With input statement, we are going to give instructions how raw file values has to be read in what sequence and what columns. The column name. So because there is no dollar, it indicates it's numeric. Then after this, the next value should be read as a column first name. Dollar indicates it should be character, and so on. So this is the sequence of columns and their names and their type, which we are asking SAS to read. So what is an in-file statement? So in-file is a statement which indicates the path of the raw file and directs SAS to locate the raw file at that particular location. And at the before end of your in file, you should specify DLM option. So it is actually the option which is a part of this statement, which is DLM. Okay. So it's one of the options. जसं prop print मध्ये options असतात OBS, no OBS. Okay. तसं in file च्या statement मध्ये हा एक option आहे. All right. Be sure to use double quotation marks when you reference a macro variable. So now what is a macro? I'll explain you later on. Okay, fine. So let's understand what is an input statement. So because we are highlighting only, they have highlighted this part because there is no further instructions related to your dates. That means we are going to ask SAS to read the information only to this value because you have asked to read till country. It will read employee ID, first name, last name, gender, salary, job title, country. So this we are not reading currently, okay? Because it's this from here to here, it's standard data. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
So your input statement reads the data fields sequentially left to right. Standard data fields require only a variable name and type. So that's what it is, variable name and type. So $sign indicates it's a character. Default length for OR is 8 bytes regardless of its type, whether character or numeric. All good? So it's reading
Yes, ma'am.
165 records 7 variables. And you see this output. But you'll find your data is truncated. Truncated म्हणजे सगळ्या व्हॅल्यूज रीड झालेल्या नाही. कारण बाय डिफॉल्ट या कॉलम्स जे डिफाईन झाले इनपुट मध्ये डिफॉल्ट लेंथ आहे 8 बाइट्स. त्यामुळे सगळे कॅरेक्टर्स तुमच्या कॉलमचे रॉ डेटा फाईल मध्ये बसले नाही. Though it is more than 8 characters, that's where you find data values are truncated. Got it? Truncated, cut
Yes.
झालेले values. Okay? So एवढं समजलं असेल तर open this demo and just execute this part. D01, chapter 8, D01.
Done, ma'am.
Others? Done?
Yes,
So did you
ma'am.
get the same result, what they expected? with proc print this way, with job title values truncated.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all good?
Yes.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Chalo. If this is fine, let's move ahead. Now a business scenario. We being data analyst, when you're reading a raw file, you should know how SAS processes it at the backend. Now, if you remember, when we submit a data step at the backend, what are the two phases of your data step? It process. Tell me. What are the two
Compilation
phases?
phase
Yeah,
and execution phase.
absolutely correct. Others agreed with Ketan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now, when it's a raw file, there is a slight change in the compilation process into SAS environment. So what is it? Because we are giving instructions with in-file statement that we are reading it from a raw file. Now, raw file means it's not at all a standard data. So we do not have standard or fixed columns, correct? So to hold the records in the memory, SAS creates input buffer. So that's what it is. First of all, of course, of your SAS data or your SAS program, it will scan the step for syntax error. It will translate each statement into machine language, and it will create an input buffer to hold one record at a time from a raw file. So when raw file is read, it's not all the raw file gets read into SAS. You know, SAS reads every line by line sequentially. So in this case also, every record will be read from top to bottom in a sequence from left to right. But when SAS is going to read the record is held into the memory, and that area of the memory is termed as input buffer. So every word is saved into input buffer or is held into input buffer, and it also has a imaginary ruler or a scale. And post input buffer, it will then create your PDV, that is program data vector, which will hold SAS observations. Understand the term. Input buffer to hold records, PDV to hold observations. That means records will be converted into SAS observations. And then, of course, the end part is descriptor portion of your new data set. Followed, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Kalyani,
Yes, ma'am.
understood? Okay. So this will be clear now. Now understand. You have submitted a data step. This is a compilation phase. Now, when it's a data step processing, when it's reading this data statement, SAS understands that it is a data statement. It has to create a data set with the name of subset, and it should be referred into temporary library work. Okay. Now this is followed. Next, when it hits in file, now pay attention. When it hits in file, SAS will create input buffer. Only when it hits in file statement, where it locates the raw file, and because of this location, it indicates with this instructions that it is a raw file. Okay, it will create an input buffer. Okay. Then when it hits input statement, pay attention. It's now the records has to be converted into observations. So SAS has to create PDV. When PDV is created, when it hits input statement. So within input statement, as per our instruction, your first column you're telling should be created as employee ID, because there is no $sign. It's indicated, it's numeric, and default byte 8 bytes. Okay, and this is the space to hold the observation. Understood?
Yes.
When
Yes, ma'am.
it reads next instruction, it will create another column in PDB, which is first name. Because of dollar, it indicates its character. It indicates it is the number of character length, which is 8 bytes. And moving ahead, this is more instructions, so your PDB is more created. So for salary, because there is no instructions of dollar, it indicates it is default taken as numeric. Of course, for every column, default length in PDB is provided is 8 bytes. All good? Now, when it hits run, that time this descriptor, this information is creating a descriptor portion for your new data set work.subset. This is the descriptor portion. All good? Understood about compilation phase when you are reading a raw file, how it is will processing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Now let's see how a data portion is created. That is your execution phase. Okay. Now, before moving into it, you have a poll. Which statement is true? An input buffer is created only if you are reading data from a raw data file. A PDB at compile time holds variable name, type, byte, size, and initial value. A descriptor portion is the first item that is created at compilation. So ह्या सगळ्या statement मधलं which is true? Is it A, B, or C? Read it carefully, understand the process in the back end, how it is happening, what we saw in the previous slide, and answer the question correctly.
Ma'am, A.
A and B वाटतं.
Ma'am, A.
A and B is correct, correct? It's only A. It's telling PDB at compile time holds variable name, type, bytes, and initial value. Value येतं का compilation मध्ये PDB च्या वेळेस नाही. त्यामुळे
No.
only A is correct, which is an input buffer is created only when you are reading a raw file. जेव्हा SAS data set आपण क्रिएट करायचा फ्रॉम अँड SAS फाईल, त्या कंपायलेशन मध्ये इनपुट बफर होत नाही, कारण तो एक्झिस्टिंग स्टँडर्ड डेटा असतो. पण हा रॉ फाईल आहे, तो फक्त रॉ फाईल रीड करायच्या वेळेस इनपुट बफर येतं. पीडीबी क्रिएट होतोय, पण इनिशियल व्हॅल्यूज नाही आहेत ना त्याच्यात. कळलं आता? ऑफकोर्स हे तर होणारच नाही. ऑल गुड?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
ओके. सो ऑफकोर्स हा सेम फ्लो चार्ट आहे. हा आता कळणार नाही जोपर्यंत आपण हे आता प्रोसेसिंग बघणार नाही. Now let's see how execution phase works. Okay. Now this is your raw file. This is your data step. Compilation is already done. Therefore, input buffer is ready. PDB is ready. Okay. Now you know very well at initial stage when SAS enters into execution phase and when it hits this data statement, your PDB is initialized to missing. Why? Because it should be vacant to take the values. So all those character variables will represent blank and numeric variables will have period. All good? Fine? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when it hits in file consists the path and what type of delimiter it is. Hence, it will just locate the raw file where it is located. Okay. Now, understand the difference in the slide. Your input buffer is not taken with a raw record because of in file. No, it's just in file means the path, the location where the raw file has to be read from. Okay, that's it. Now, when it hits input, because why I'm emphasizing on this is because when you'll be giving your technical round of interviews or even with your global certifications, you will have a confusing questions telling with in file, it will read the raw record into input buffer or with input. So this would be the question. So the answer should be only when it hits input. See, the first record is read into input buffer. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Only when it hits within file, only it locates the path. But when it hits input, that time only the raw data record is read and it is carried into or read into input buffer. All good? Now, understand how SAS reads the value as per the instructions of this column in input statement. Now, the next, because SAS reads the statement from left to right, the next path is employee ID. So employee ID, now how SAS knows that it has to read from here till here, only till comma? It's because you have specified this DLM option. So anything between the commas is the value for the variable. That is why you have to be specifically specifying what is the DLM, because this comma will not help us to read it properly if we do not specify DLM. That is why this DLM option is important. So from left till this comma, SAS reads this is the value of employee ID. Then what is the value SAS should read for first name? Between this semicolon, this comma and this comma, you have a value to be read for Tom, value of Tom as first name. So what will happen now? It's reading it into PDB. The value is converted from text to a floating point numeric value to be converted into SAS data observation. Now record is converted into SAS data observation. That is why input buffer is termed or is created to hold a record, because this is a non-SAS value, sorry, non-SAS field. This non-SAS record will be converted into SAS dataset with default or with the structured column with all these structures. Okay. Now next you have first name. So anything between comma and this comma is the value for first name. This arrow indicates, of course, the record is read from left to right according to their instructions. So this value will be read into PDB as SAS data observation. Okay. Now see the alignment here. Here the numeric value is right aligned. The character variable value is left aligned. This is very much important to understand. Characters are always left aligned. Numeric are always right aligned. Okay? Understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then last name here. And of course, the other observations, anything between from this this comma to this comma is the value for last name. And between this comma to this comma is the value for gender, and so on. So that's what it's reading the values for your input statement. And when it hits run, it will create the descriptor portion. So this will be reading to a data portion. So with this run, implicit output, implicit written, that means this content of your PDB will be written to the output data, and run also indicates as to return back to process your data step again for upcoming rows. So hence run has two responsibilities. One, to perform implicit output, that is the content of PDB should be written directly to the new data set, and also indicates as that it should again reprocess it for upcoming rows, hence implicit return. So this is the first line of observation for output data set, which creates, or we term it as data push. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is how now with next, now understand. Okay, now it goes back for the next data cycle processing. Again, now your data step is been processing. it's reading a statement. Your PDV is getting reinitialized to missing. Why? Because these variables are not coming from existing file. Earlier, when we were reading it from a SAS dataset, your PDV was not getting reinitialized to missing there because it was coming from existing SAS file. But here, these variables have to be created every time when you're reading it. Hence, the values for your PDV should be vacant, and that is why your PDV always gets reinitialized to missing. Understood? When it hits data statement. Okay? Now
Yeah.
within file, yes.
हे जे खाली एक दिलेले आहे प्रत्येक याच्यामध्ये ते बाईक्स आहे का?
हा.
अच्छा, तर मॅम जर रॉ डेटामध्ये आपले जे डेटा आहे न्यूमेरिक वगैरे किंवा कॅरेक्टर तो एक पेक्षा जास्त राहिला तर
विल सी इट. लेंथ स्टेटमेंट आहे ना, ते आपण पाहूया हाऊ इट वर्क्स. ओके. नाउ इन द सेकंड इटरेशन it will come to an in-file statement. It will locate the path. Okay. Look at the input buffer. It is still holding the previous record. Okay. Now you know whenever it hits input, that time only the new record is loaded into input buffer. Now second record from raw file is loaded into input buffer. And as per the instructions of second record, it will read the values for your input in your PDV. See? So see, between this comma to this comma, Wilson. So because these characters are within 8 bytes, it's saving it correctly. But look at the job title. It's not reading all the job title value. So it's getting truncated. Why? Because of the length. Understood? कळलं आता?
येस मॅम.
Of course, implicit output, implicit return. मग हा जो content होता PDV चा तो आता as a second observation add will to your new data set. And this is how it will continue until EOF म्हणजे end of the file marker. म्हणजे जोपर्यंत raw data files चे सगळे rows read होत नाही तोपर्यंत हा data step process होईल. म्हणजे जर raw data file मध्ये जर 100 records असतील तर हा data step 100 times iterate होईल. All good? And then you'll find that we find the data is not coming appropriately. The values are truncated. So how to adjust this? You have to come across with length statement. Make a note. A length statement should always be placed before input statement. Okay. So the syntax for length is variable, its type, and the length. So variable, its type, and length. So length should be placed before input. Why? Pay attention. Why? Because during compilation, when you are reading this statement, input च्या आधी length दिला तर ते columns PDV मध्ये as per those length will be created. कळलं? Because input मध्ये काय होतंय? इनपुट आलं की ऑफकोर्स इनपुटने पण कॉलम आणि टाईप आणि लेंथ येतंय. पण जर लेंथ आपण इनपुटच्या नंतर दिला तर ऑलरेडी कॉलम्स क्रिएट होणार, त्यामुळे लेंथचा इफेक्ट होणार नाही. कळलं आता? कारण का इनपुट स्टेटमेंट ऑल्सो डिसाइड द कॅरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ कॉलम्स. आर यू गेटिंग इट? कळलं?
Yes.
And that is what you see, the values are no more truncated now. Okay, now answer this poll. Suppose you want the order of the variables to match the order of the fields. आता काय झालंय? आता आपण आधी लेंथ दिलंय, त्यामुळे जे काय लेंथ आपल्याला ऍडजस्ट करायचे ते लेंथ मध्ये आपण दिलेलं आहे, त्यामुळे आधी ते कॉलम्स क्रिएट झाले. दिसतंय? फर्स्ट नेम, लास्ट नेम, जेंडर, जॉब टायटल, कंट्री. पण इनपुट मध्ये आपल्याला सिक्वेन्स काय आहे? एम्प्लॉय आयडी, फर्स्ट नेम, लास्ट नेम, जेंडर, सॅलरी, जॉब टायटल, कंट्री. पण हे आधीच जॉईन झाले आणि मग आता ह्यात लेंथ मध्ये हे आधी इथं डिफाईन केल्यामुळे हे ऑर्डरनी ते कॉलम्स सेव्ह झाले आणि उरलेल्या कॉलम्सचं पीडीबी मध्ये त्याचं पोझिशन, लेंथ अँड हे सगळं आलं. पण ऍज बिकॉज वी आर रीडिंग इट इन इनपुट स्टेटमेंट इन दिस ऑर्डर, ते व्हॅल्यूज अकॉर्डिंगली येईल. पण output is not in that particular order. कळलं? कळतंय का?
Yes. Yes.
तर ही ऑर्डर कशी ठेवणार? So that's what is telling. Answer this. Suppose you want the order of the variables to match the order of the fields. You can include the numeric variables in the length statement. Which of the following produces the correct result? Is it A or B? Yes, is it A or B?
B, ma'am.
Okay.
B.
Yes, because in the length, you can provide all the columns along with its attribute and the sequence what you want in your output. And input will just is the instructions to read the records. That's it. Okay. So in input, you no need of writing now $sign because you have already defined PDV with this characteristics. So ह्या input statement नी काय होणार आहे? फक्त ह्या order मध्ये values read करायचे from input buffer to PDV एवढं instruction येणार. Length मध्ये column name, type आणि length define होणार PDV मध्ये. कळलं?
Yes, ma'am.
Either way is either if you do not adjust this with your length order, there is another way when you're creating a report, you want the order of your variables in a specific variable. But as I remember, someone has said that in proc contents, how can we see the variables in their original order? So you can write varnam. So you'll see the original orders. Okay. Because normally proc contents मध्ये काय येतं? प्रॉक कंटेंट्स मध्ये अल्फाबेटिक लिस्ट ऑफ व्हेरिएबल्स येते बरोबर. ही जी असते ही त्यांच्या डेटा मधली ऑर्डर येते पण हे अल्फाबेटिकली येतं. पण इन केस आपल्याला प्रॉक कंटेंटचा रिझल्ट अल्फाबेटिकली नको त्यांच्या ओरिजिनल ऑर्डर मध्ये हवा असेल तर प्रॉक कंटेंट्स मध्ये आपण हे वार नेम ऑप्शन देऊ शकतो. ऑल गुड.
Yes, ma'am.
and that's what you'll see the output. And that is the first part of reading your raw file with list input method. And of course, we saw how to read only standard data. Correct? Any questions here? Yes, any questions?
No, ma'am.
No? So go ahead and do this demo D02 and D03. Do 8 chapter D02 as well as D03.
मॅम
येस.
आपल्याला प्रॉप प्रिंट मध्ये एम्प्लॉय आयडी आणि सॅलरी लास्टला दिसते. तर ती म्हणजे त्याच्या प्रॉपर ऑर्डर नुसार जर घ्यायची असेल तर.
आयदर तू प्रॉपरिंट मध्ये वार ह्या स्टेटमेंटनी प्रॉपर ऑर्डर कर, किंवा हा जो नंतरचा टॉपिक आहे तू लेंथ मध्ये हे सगळे ऑर्डर व्यवस्थित दे, मी तुला त्या
अच्छा.
ऑर्डर मध्ये येतील. कळलं?
मॅम आपण ते हे जे लेन स्टेटमेंट ते इन फाईलच्या खाली पण देऊ शकतो ना.
तू करून बघ इन फाईलच्या खाली काय होतं ते बघ.
ओके.
मी हा टॉपिक ऑलरेडी डिस्कस केलाय की इन फाईलच्या आधी का द्यायची लेंथ, पण तू ट्राय कर इन फाईलच्या नंतर, इनपुटच्या नंतर, सॉरी काय तुझा क्वेश्चन काय होता? आफ्टर इन फाईल.
इनपुटच्या वरती आणि इन फाईलच्या खाली.
हा, इट शुड बी ऑलवेज बिफोर इनपुट. इन फाईल नंतर केला तरी चालेल. आता तू
फक्त
माझा जर
इनपुटच्या
आधीच पाहिजे, हे बघ मी काय केलंय,
Yes.
पण इनपुटच्या आधी दिलाय, कारण का पीडीबी डिफाईन ऑलरेडी होईल ना जर मी इनपुटच्या नंतर दिले. नाव पे अटेन्शन, इफ आय राईट दिस आफ्टर दिस, ओके, वॉर्निंग काय झालं, आणि वॉर्निंग काय आली आहे, काय म्हणतोय,
लेंथ ऑलरेडी सेट झालेली.
का, कारण का तू इनपुट मध्ये ऑलरेडी हे इन्स्ट्रक्शन्स दिले. डिफॉल्ट लेंथ काय आहे, 8 बाइट्स, बरोबर. नंतर तू लेंथ देतोय आणि सांगतोय ह्या कॉलमचा टाईप आहे, ही लेंथ पाहिजे. पण जर पीडीबी ऑलरेडी डिफाईन्ड असेल विथ दिस डिफॉल्ट लेंथ, पुन्हा लेंथ कसं काय सेट करणार सांग. कळलं का?
ओके मॅम.
आधी पीडीबी क्रिएट होणार इनपुटनी, मग लेंथ स्टेटमेंटनी तू जर लेंथ द्यायचा प्रयत्न केला तर पीडीबी ऑलरेडी क्रिएट होणार विथ 8 बाइट्स, मग ह्याने काय उपयोगच होणार नाही ना.
Yes, ma'am.
That is what it's telling. Length of character variable first name has already been set. Use length statement as the very first statement in your data step. That's why it's recommended to make use of this length statement before the column length gets defined with input. Either you write it immediately after data step statement or before input. आता यांनी immediately after data step का दिलाय, कारण का sometimes we tend to forget to give it after in file. So it's better to write immediately after or before in file itself. कळलं?
Yes.
Done? समझला? If this is done, what we can do is we can take a break of 10 minutes and we'll move in after 10 minutes, okay? So it's
Yes, ma'am.
almost 11:50. We'll move in after 10 minutes, which is by 12 o'clock, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
No. No,
Any
ma'am.
questions? No,
No,
all
ma'am.
right.
No, ma'am.
So now business scenario. Now you have some invalid data values in this data, which is sales 3, whatever the name is, dot CSV. Okay. So, okay, it's invalid maybe. Okay. Sales 3 invalid dot CSV. You have to write a data step to create a SAS data file. Okay. Now, how is the invalid data? Now look into it. They're telling what problems do you see with the data values for the last 2 data fields, salary and country. What you can observe.
मॅम एकाची कंट्री
काय मला पुढे
वा.
आवाजच नाही आला.
कंट्री दिलेली
5
country.
सेकंडची मॅम कंट्री नाही आहे.
इथे 12 आहे आणि इथं सॅलरीची व्हॅल्यू N/A आहे. म्हणजे ह्या न्यूमरिक व्हॅल्यूज मध्ये एक कॅरेक्टर व्हॅल्यू आहे आणि या कॅरेक्टर्स व्हॅल्यूज मध्ये एक न्यूमरिक व्हॅल्यू आहे. तर अशा टाईपचा इनव्हॅलिड डेटा कधी आला तर ते कसं काम करतो SAS हे आपण पाहूयात. दॅट्स व्हॉट इट इज. ओके. So you gave the instructions, you wrote a raw file, fine, it's demo D04 and just work on this. It's chapter demo D04. Okay, so we gave the instructions. Of course, I need to change the path for sales 3 invalid.csv file. Sales. Okay, now I'm submitting this data step. Now see, you will get the output. Okay, so there is no alarm or anything on our code. But when you see your data in salary, it's giving you a missing value. And in country, it's telling AU is red. It's all good. Okay, but let's see what log is telling. This is the notes. So when you have this type of information into log, it is the type of data error. Make a note. आतापर्यंत आपण सिंटॅक्स एरर पाहिले होते. सिंटॅक्स एरर मध्ये तो हायलाइट करतो, एरर म्हणतो आणि डेटा स्टेप किंवा तुमची कुठलीही स्टेप असो तो पुढे प्रोसेस करतच नाही. पण इकडे हा एररच आहे, which is termed as data error. It is giving you the notes about your data processing. It's still processing the data and it's still giving you the output. So when you get this type of information about notes and all, and it gives you, this is the contents of PDV, it means it's a data error. Now, why this data error occurred? Because as per your instructions, so what is this 4 and what is this? It's telling you into PDV at the end underscore n underscore equal to 4. That means in the 4th row, you had an error. Okay, that is a data error. So what's the 4th row? Let's check for your SAS invalid.csv. So what is the 4th row? So when you see this, 1, 2, 3, 4, this part. So this is the 4th row. Understood? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
So in the
ma'am.
4th row, you have SAS is telling something is incorrect. So it gave you, this is the input buffer. So this is your raw file. This is the ruler and this is the raw file of input buffer. Okay. And this is the contents of PDV. So it's telling PDV first row, first column, its value, first column, its value. Okay. First column, its value. And it's telling it's not able to read the value for salary. And it's telling it is error. Error underscore error equal to 1. Manje, it is like a Boolean expression, 1 or 0. 1 indicates error has occurred. कारण का हा same error इकडे जर खाली स्क्रोल केला तर इकडे पण व्हॅल्यू तेच आहे, इकडे पण व्हॅल्यू तेच आहे. म्हणजे हे काय नंबर ऑफ एरर्स आहे असं नाही. So this is telling it's iteration 43 म्हणजे 43rd record, 23 iteration म्हणजे 23 record आणि error 1 म्हणजे 1 म्हणजे true, 0 म्हणजे false. So 1 म्हणजे error has occurred. So what is it? It's a data error. So what is the data error? If you look at here, what the note is telling, invalid data for salary in line number 4 from column 31 to 33. That is from here to here, which is this 3-letter values. Why it's telling it's invalid data for salary? Because as per your instructions in input statement, salary is numeric, but the value here is character. Understood? Hence, this is a data error because the value is not as per your instructions. You are telling salary is numeric, but you're in this row, 4th row, in column 31 to 33, this is character. That's why it's telling invalid data for salary in line number 4. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So you should be very well understanding what log is telling. He 3 line. And when you are attending your certification exam, you will get this type of screenshot and they'll ask you the options that what does this mean? Okay. Next, it's telling it's 23rd line. And if you see this contents of PDV also, you find its error at 23rd iteration of data step. Again, the salary is missing. So what it's telling with this note, with this salary in line number 23, at column this and this is again at 23rd row you have NA. So if you see your raw file, 23rd again it's NA. Okay, so that's what again it is. Then moving back, another note, but it is in line number 43. Now it's again telling salary is invalid in 43rd row. So if you see 43rd row, again it's N. Okay, so it's telling again the same thing. And when you scroll your contents of PDV salary, it's not able to read. Okay, so when you see the output, this will, because it's not able to read, salary is numeric column, it will take period. But when you scroll down, you'll find country it is able to read. Why? Because you know, numeric values can be saved as character. Getting it? Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That is why it is able to read country, no errors about country. But yes, the type of salary is numeric, but the value is character. Hence, the instructions is not as per your data. Hence, this type of message in log is termed as data error. Okay, so that's what has happened, and you will find this. This telling missing values are stored in salary for input value for NA, and the value 12 was successfully stored in country. The data error occurred on observation 4, but not on observation 6. Correct? That we discussed, because though country is character, numbers can be read as character. So there is no error. So this is termed as data error. So when data error occurs, okay, what does it happens? And when data occurs, data error occurs. So data error does not, or you say that data error occurs when a data value does not match the field specification. Because in our input, we have given salary as numeric, but the data is character. So the instructions here is not matching as per the data. Hence, the data error occurred and you get the log message. First and foremost, log immediately writes the note telling invalid data for salary in line number 4 from this column to this column. Then it shows the column ruler. It shows the input record. So this is the content of input buffer, and this is the content of PDB. All good? So the missing value is assigned to the corresponding variable and execution continues. So it does not stop, but still keeps processing. But this 4 things appears into log, and you have to be understanding that this is where it's a data error. So first and foremost, when it finds something is unmatched, it first reads note, gives note, telling it's a data, invalid data for column salary in line 4 from line number this to this. Then it gives you the scale. This is the input buffer content, and this is your PDB content. All good?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what it is. And by default, whenever you're processing your data step and PDB is created, either you're reading from the SAS dataset source or it's a raw file. There are always 2 temporary variables created in PDB. It is not seen into output because at the time of execution, they are dropped automatically. Therefore, they are termed as temporary, which is underscore error underscore and underscore n underscore. So underscore n underscore is the counter for your data step iteration, whereas underscore error underscore, it indicates whether your data step processed successfully or unsuccessfully. The value is 0 or 1. 0 means there is no error. 1 means error occurred, and that's what you see here. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Everyone, you'll have questions in your certification and in your interview as well about these 2 temporary variables. Okay. And that's it. You have the same demo to be done to understand how it works at the back end. Okay. So before that, let's use this poll. Submit this program A01 and examine the log. Which statement best describes the reason for the error? Is it A or B? So let's see. I'll work on this. It's activity A01 for a chapter 8. Okay. Let me give the path. Now, what is this every time they are giving this? Okay. So what does this mean? Okay. So you know that the path is common till here for us. बरोबर? हा path common आहे ना? Home till programming one folder.
Yes, ma'am.
मग प्रत्येक वेळा हा path असं देण्यापेक्षा या पाथला आपण एक सिम्बॉलिक प्रेझेंटेशन देऊया जो प्रत्येक वेळा इथं टाईप करायची गरज नाही. त्यासाठी आपण काय करणार आहोत, आपण एक मॅक्रो करणार आहोत. So what is it? I'm going to write it %let, okay, and I'm going to give the name of the variable path equal to, and तो common path जो आपला हा आहे ह्याला आपण तो नाव देणार आहे विदाउट कोटेशन. ओके. हा व्हेरिएबल होणार आहे आणि त्याची ही व्हॅल्यू आहे विथ %let. तर ह्याची व्हॅल्यू जर मी हे सबमिट केलं, ओके, तर लॉग मध्ये फक्त हा स्टेटमेंट रन झालाय पण ह्याचं काय रिलेटेड इन्फॉर्मेशन येत नाही. मग मला ह्याची व्हॅल्यू ही असाइन झाली ही कसं बघणार? त्यासाठी अगेन हा मॅक्रो लँग्वेजचा स्टेटमेंट आहे त्यामुळे तो सुरू होतो %नी. सो आय एम गोइंग टू राईट % आणि पुट स्टेटमेंट यूज करणार आहे. ओके. आणि एक सिम्बॉल असणार आहे ampersand which represents it's a macro variable, कारण का हा व्हेरिएबल आहे आणि ते मॅक्रो आहे म्हणून तो ampersand साइनने रिप्रेझेंट करणार आणि त्या पाथची व्हॅल्यू काय आहे ते मी पाहणार. ऑफकोर्स इट विल बी शोइंग यू दिस व्हॅल्यू इन टू लॉग. तो म्हणतोय की पाथची व्हॅल्यू तुमची ही व्हॅल्यू आहे. कळलं? तर प्रत्येक वेळा मी हा पाथ द्यायच्या ऐवजी what I'm going to represent is ampersand path, आणि हे because हे सर्व्हरला अटॅच आहे तर हा असा पाहिजे. So when I execute this part, I will see there is no error, but my data is getting executed correctly with ampersand path. Okay, see now of course it's a data error, but ha ampersand path म्हणजे it is connecting to this with this. Okay, now what is the data error? In line number 1, it's an error. What is it? It's telling invalid data for last in line 1, column 16 to 17. So 16th column हे 15 आहे, 16 to 17 ही व्हॅल्यू कॅरेक्टर आहे. ओके, पण मग लास्ट इट्स टेकिंग पिरियड, म्हणजे लास्ट हा डिफाईन काय झालाय आपल्या डेटामध्ये ड्युरिंग इनपुट. सी कुठल्या टाईपचा कॉलम डिफाईन झालाय हा, टाईप काय कॉलमचा,
न्यूमरिक
numeric. That is why it's telling its period. So everywhere it's the same thing. So coming back to your activity, which statement best describes the reason for error? Yes,
B, ma'am.
B. Absolutely. Last, data is not invalid, but as a programmer, we did not give the correct information how to read it. So you should have given. How you will correct this program now? काय करेक्शन करणार?
इनपुट मध्ये मॅम लास्टला एक
Dollars.
That's it. बरोबर? And execute. झालं? आता तुम्हाला हे जर मी पुन्हा एक्सप्लेन करते. ओके, सो व्हॉट वी हॅव टू डू इज एव्हरी टाइम जिथं कुठं आपल्याला ती पाथ किंवा एखादा वर्ड रिपिटेटिव्हली यूज होतोय, तर त्याच्या एवढं टाईप करण्याऐवजी वी कॅन यूज अ मॅक्रो व्हेरिएबल. ओके, तर तो कसं क्रिएट करतात, पर्सेंट लेट स्टेटमेंट. इट्स अ स्टेटमेंट. ओके, तर पर्सेंट लेट मी त्या मॅक्रो व्हेरिएबलचं नाव देणार की मला पाथ हवाय, आणि मी तो पाथ माझा देणार, म्हणजे हा व्हेरिएबल आहे मॅक्रो आणि त्याची व्हॅल्यू आहे हे. आणि तो कसा रिप्रेझेंट करणार, मी माझ्या कोडमध्ये एम्परसेंट पाथ, आणि हा एम्परसेंट पाथ जेव्हा पण कधी आपण देतो त्यावेळेस तो डबल कोट्स मध्येच द्यायला पाहिजे. जर मी सिंगल कोट्स दिले तर तो रिझॉल्व्ह होत नाही. ओके, तर तो एक सिंगल कोट घेणार आणि तो आपल्याला एरर आला की हे त्याला काही समजत नाही. का, तर जेव्हा कधी आपण एम्परसेंट करून मॅक्रो व्हेरिएबल लिहितो, या अँड साइनला एम्परसेंट बोलतात. ओके, तो जो रिझॉल्व्ह करायचा असेल की इट शुड रिझॉल्व्ह विथ दिस व्हॅल्यू, त्याला आपण डबल कोट्स मध्ये देतो, तरच तो रिझॉल्व्ह होतो. ऑल गुड? ओके, आणि जर आपल्याला चेक करायचं की ह्याचे हा एक्झॅक्ट व्हॅल्यू ही आहे, ही कशी चेक करणार, त्यासाठी पुट स्टेटमेंट यूज करतो. मॅक्रो लँग्वेज एव्हरी टाइम स्टार्ट्स विथ पर्सेंट, फक्त पुट यूज होत नाही, त्यामुळे पर्सेंट आणि पुट देणार हा स्टेटमेंट आहे. आणि मी देणार की व्हॅल्यू काय आहे, एम्परसेंटची इक्वल टू पाथ. ओके, तेव्हा तो मला देणार की ह्याची व्हॅल्यू पाथ इक्वल टू मला लॉग मध्ये देणार, हा तुमचा पाथ आहे. कळलं? सो दिस इज द बेस्ट वे ऑफ your coding where you are minimizing your coding of your path. So every time तुम्ही लाईव्ह सिनारिओ मध्ये पण तुमच्या लाईव्ह डेटाला सर्व्हर्सला खूप मोठे पाथ्स असतात. सो इन्स्टेड ऑफ टायपिंग दोज पाथ्स इन डिटेल, क्रिएट अ मॅक्रो अँड यूज इट इन युअर प्रोग्राम. आलं लक्षात? So this is termed as a macro variable which you create with percent late, and you check the value for this with percent put giving ampersand equal to path. आता हा एक वे आहे टू शो द व्हॅल्यू. अनदर वे यू कॅन ऑल्सो सी द व्हॅल्यू डायरेक्टली रिप्रेझेंट विथ एम्परसेंट. आता एम्परसेंट विथ पाथ इज अ सिम्बॉलिक रिप्रेझेंटेशन फॉर दिस पाथ. त्यामुळे ते एम्परसेंट पाथ ह्या व्हेरिएबलचं मॅक्रोचं नाव आहे पाथ, पण तो रिप्रेझेंट होतो एम्परसेंटनी. आणि इनडायरेक्टली सॅस हे म्हणजे काय, तो मेमरीमध्ये इज दिस पाथ. So either you can represent or you can check the value with percent put into log, and either you write ampersand path, तर तो फक्त ह्याला रिझॉल्व्ह करेल आणि तो हे पाथ देणार. कळलं? पण
Yes, ma'am.
पाथ इक्वल टू जर बघायचं असेल तर तुम्ही तो अशा फॉर्मॅट मध्ये द्यायचा. ऑल गुड? बाकीचे
मॅम
येस मॅम.
ट्राय दिस. Open this activity and try this part which I have given. आता हे तुम्ही नंतर करेक्शन करा, that's your wish, but try this. पण look at it, हा जो आपला स्लॅश आहे तो चेंज पाहिजे as per server slash, हा असाच पाहिजे. ओके, हा कल्याणी, व्हॉट्स युअर क्वेश्चन?
मॅम म्हणजे ते इन फाईल पाथ म्हणजे आपण नॉन सेन्स सीव्हीचा पाथ कॉपी करून इकडे टाकत होतो ना एंड पाथ
करेक्ट करेक्ट.
तर मग
तर हा
तो न
प्रत्येक
टाकता-
वेळा ऐक ना, प्रत्येक वेळा हे तर सगळं सेमच आहे ना,
हो
फक्त
मॅम
ही फाईल चेंज होतीये. मग का आपण प्रत्येक वेळा हे सगळंच टाईप करायचं? तर ह्याच्याऐवजी आय एम गोइंग टू सिम्पली मेक यूज एम्परसँड पाथ. आता हा वन टाइम स्टेटमेंट आहे. हा मी एकदा सबमिट केला तर म्हणजे इट्स सेम लाईक युअर लिब नेम, इट्स ऍक्टिव्ह थ्रू आउट माय सेशन. तर मी इथं पण instead of this I write ampersand path and I submit it. So I'll get it. So log मध्ये पण चेक करेल तर इन फाईल तो रिप्रेझेंट करतो, ampersand तो अनवाईप करून काय रीड करतोय, सेम थिंग. बरोबर.
हो मॅम.
So try this, open this activity. आता तुम्ही तुमचा रिस्पेक्टिव्ह पाथ द्यायचा आणि हे पर्सन पुटनी चेक करायची ती व्हॅल्यू आणि तो इथे रिप्रेझेंट करायचा. पण हे जो स्लॅश आहे तो असा पाहिजे, कारण का आपल्या कोडमध्ये तो ड्राईव्हचा पाथ असा आहे, तो नकोय, तर आपल्याला तो असा पाहिजे. ऑल गुड, गो अहेड, वर्क ऑन दिस.
मॅम
Done, ma'am.
Understood, everyone? ज्यांचं
ma'am.
कोणाला झालंय त्यांना समजलाय कन्सेप्ट?
Yes, ma'am. समजलं.
डेटा एरर समजला, अंडरस्कोर एरर अंडरस्कोर का सिग्निफिकन्स कळलं, अंडरस्कोर एन अंडरस्कोरचं पण सिग्निफिकन्स कळलं.
Yes, ma'am.
एनी डाउट्स? कल्याणी,
येस मॅम.
कळलं का कन्सेप्ट? झालं?
हो मॅम. हो.
All right, if this is all understood. So this is what it is, and you have an exercise. So exercise I leave to you as a self-study. Okay, so tomorrow we'll resume back to start.
मॅम
Yes,
कालचं युट्यूबचं लेक्चर दिसत नाही ma'am.
दिसत नाहीये?
नाही.
ठीक आहे, पाहते मी.
हो.
Okay, all right. Chalo, wish
Yes.
you all the best. Bye and take care. Thank you.
बाय मॅम.
Here, ma'am.